Hi there, Dave here with the second video about our Flight Log 2 application. And so I've gone ahead and brought it up. And this video, we're going to start dealing with the fact that we have a problem. And we have this part working just fine where we've got the data coming in like that and this being produced. But then we came to what we wanted to get done the second iteration of our project with the user. And so this time around he says, well, put all the capability you have into a menu. Yeah, okay, we can do that. And we got all that done and all implemented inside of 2A. And then we went to do the min-max, and I pointed out the fact that we're not keeping the right stuff. We're keeping information. We are accumulating stuff and keeping that in those totals. We have a total count and a total distance. And in the total count and the total distance, that's where we are accumulating information. And look, in this version, the last version we looked at, it's up in main. It's got no business being in main. It has to do with the report. Nobody else uses those totals except the report, and yet I'm passing them all around. That's not what I want to be doing. I don't want to be accumulating information. I want to be keeping data. So I want to go back and all the data that the user entered, that's what I want to keep. And so what we're going to do is start dealing with having to make this change. And so once again, let's go back to the design and make sure we all understand that in the second report, we're talking about the shortest and the longest at Sully. I didn't keep that information. I just used a counter, which accumulated the count, right, the number of flights, and a total for the total distance. Thinking all I was going to have to do is have that information. So I'm going to go ahead and build an array, and it's going to be in main because everybody's going to want to get to it, but it's going to be that data, that initial data. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, look, this version, the 2A version, is really pretty good. It's got most of the functionality. So what we really have to do is to, well, just make a major change to that version and make it into this. So I copied this and made it into this. And then we're going to start step by step. Where should we start? Well, why don't we start with number 1 here? How about display all sites? So we want to display this. Well, for right now, that means all the data that we've accumulated in the sites. We used to display those totals, but now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be accumulating the raw data. And so we're going to be displaying all that raw data. And in fact, we're actually going to be displaying that in site. All the site stuff will be together. So we will in fact be displaying all of the data for the site. Add new site, no problem, we can do that. The only change there is we need to take away the creation of new totals for our report, which we used to have to do in that routine. Crazy. Things are starting to actually make more sense. Let's go take a look at the code. Here we go. So we still have all of our constants. Nothing's changed there. We still have our menu items. Yep, no problem. Now up here, the total count and the total distance, those are down below. They're down in the report. And we'll deal with them in the next video. So what we want to keep is flights. And so we're going to run add sites automatically. Yeah, that goes ahead and loads up our basic sites. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run test flights. And this is what we did at the end of the class, where we said, look, it's silly for us to keep having to enter this test data all the time. Why don't we have that stuff done automatically so we can test what we want to test from the menu? So we're always going to be entering Sully, SOL, comma, 12, and then enter, and then we CLI and 37 and enter, and then SOL and 20 and enter, right? Get tired of doing that. So let's do that automatically. Let's take a look at that right now. So add test flights. So when we come down to add test flights, test flights should be someplace at the bottom. Yep, there's add test flights. So we pass in the flights array. That's where we keep all of our raw data. And then what we do is we go ahead and append that information. We stick it into the flights. These are our three basic flights. There's our SOL 12, CLI 37, SOL 20, right? We're just keeping an array of strings. So that is just an array. That's a string. There is an array of strings. We have an array called flights that at the end of, when we go to do this display all sites and passing in flights, we are going to have an array with 3 elements in it. Those 3. And that's cool. So look, it not only loads them, but it displays that. It does that right off the bat. It does that automatically. So now we can just select what we want to do. So let's demo that. And we'll go ahead and run this guy here. And there he is. He's run that stuff. He went and loaded up the array. And there's the 3 that are in there. And look, they're in the right sequence. CLI's on the top and the 2 SOLs are together. So there's our site information. And then it comes back and it says, what do you want to do? So now we could just go ahead and run our report, for instance, either one, and test that they work without having to load this information. So we'll demo that. And so I can go ahead, and this version that we got done in class, we can go ahead and add a new site. So we can do that. And then we'll go ahead and enter, who knows, DDD. And then we'll say X to end. And then we can go ahead and enter some flight information for that. So we're going to go ahead and do 3. Oh, seems like we got a long way, didn't we? So here we're going to enter DDD, and we're going to go ahead and say 45, and then we go ahead and enter, and then we'll enter X to end. It should say that someplace. And now if we go ahead and run our display all sites, we should see everything in order. And there they are. There's CLI 37, there's DDD for 45, there's SOL for 12, and for 20. So all the data is there. And notice that we did not convert it. If we want to convert it to uppercase, we can convert it to uppercase. No problem. But why don't we do that when we move off? Most everything's done. Let's go take a look. Let's see. There's our add There's no changes there. Add totals. No, we haven't done any of that. That also has to do with the report, doesn't it? Next video. So, okay. So we've got flights here. And there's our what to do. And we're going to do the same thing that we were doing before. No changes there, except that we're not passing in those totals, right? They all have to do with the report. But what we are passing in is flights, because flights are going to be used by everybody. Some of the routines are going to update, some are going to change, whatever. But we're going to pass in flights. And so the rest of it's the same. Display array. So what I did was I changed it from display menu to display array, because in fact this guy here, this routine can be used also to display our input data, which in fact I do. Right down here where it says display all sites, look at how simple this is. Display all sites. Right? That's our first menu item. It takes in flights, yeah. What it does is it sorts them so that they're in the order by the beginning of the array. That's what that does. And we can sort in very sophisticated ways. And then when we're done, we just go ahead and display array flights. So we use our display array function, which is the same one that we use to display the menu. And it's doing two things. Add new site. Now, the only thing we did there was eliminate the addition of two more variables to the array, the total count array, and the distance total array. They were here. Threw them out because, once again, that all has to do with that report. So anything that had to do with the report that was inside something called add new site got yanked out and put into the report. And we'll worry about all the report stuff in the next video. We gotta separate what we're working on. Add flight info. Wow, that became really easy, because all I do is I check if it's valid, and if it is, I just go ahead and append it. If it's not, then I go ahead and say it's not valid. There's run site report. We're going to do that later. Change validate. A lot of the code that was part of the validation routine was not actually in the validate logic. So validate input returns true or false. And so now it actually validates everything pretty much. I even put in a validation in here to see if the distance was reasonable. It had to be, if it was less than 1 or if it was greater than 199 miles, then we return false. And we return false under these circumstances also. Okay, take care.